Hello, Professor Kent Lee here. Welcome back to this video series on pronunciation issues for East Asian students learning English. In my last video, I went over some common problems, and in this video, I want to maybe go through some examples and also point out a few other problems and challenges for Asian students learning English. So just to review, in my last video, we talked about consonants, for example, consonant clusters, and we talked about stops and fricatives, stop sounds like t, d, k, where the tongue or lips, for example, p, stop the airflow and then release it. Then we have fricatives or friction sounds like s, f, v, sh, and so on. We talk about voice and voiceless, so like the s and the z, voiced sounds like the z, z, which are produced by vibration of the vocal cords down here in the throat. And we talked about vowels, like the distinction between long and short vowels, and the length is either because vowels are tensed, like e versus I, which is lax, or they're glided, like a, like in train, a, o, like in boat, oo, like in Luke. And we talked about stress, and stress is pronounced by length, longer vowels like intonation, where the A is longer, and it also has a pitch rise, intonation, and it sounds louder because of that. And we talked a little bit about word stress and compound word stress. And it's all very complicated, and there's a lot I couldn't really talk about because English stress is complicated. Well, I want to go through some English sentences as examples and point out some things, point out some of these issues, and maybe point out a couple more. So let's take a sentence like, it's raining cats and dogs. Cats and dogs. And of course, it's an idiom meaning it's raining very heavily. So notice the pronunciation of the S, the final S here. Cats, dogs, they sound different. They're spelled the same, but they're different. And this is true for S when it is a grammatical ending. So for plurals, for possessive, like the cat's meow or the dog's bone, and also in verbs like she goes, or in verbs like sits where it's voiceless and digs where it's voiced. So S as a grammatical ending will become voiced if the final sound is voiced. So cats, voiceless. Sits, voiceless, but dogs, voiced, gets voiced into sort of a Z. Dogs, goes, like she goes. Oh, go is in a vowel. Vowels are voiced, by the way. If you put your hand on your throat, a, e, o, u, vowels are voiced. So the S will become voiced. She goes. The dog digs, digs. Sits and digs. Sits, voiceless, digs. Okay, voiced. So the S grammatical ending, like for plurals and for verb endings, becomes voiced if the final sound of the word is voiced. And that's something you might not have been taught. So I'll put up a list of the voiced consonants here, as well as, of course, vowels are voiced too. So if a word ends in one of these voiced sounds, then the S will be voiced. If it's a plural or possessive or a verb ending, it will become voiced also. And that's also true of the after vowels, including the schwa that we sometimes insert like judges. And you can't say judges. So the schwa is a vowel, vowels are voiced, and that becomes voiced too. Another note about voicing, we see in the next sentence, or two sentences, I need a cab and I need a cap. So cab, B is voiced, cab, cap. I'm wearing a cap. I need a cap. Notice the difference. Of course, the B is voiced. That's different, of course. It makes it a different word. Now, voicing is a little hard in speaking at the end of a word, because at the end of a word, the vocal cords kind of just want to stop moving. And that's natural. And in fact, in many languages, consonants are always voiced at the end of words. So if you've learned other languages, you might know this. Like final consonants always are made voiceless in German, Dutch, Polish, Russian, Ukrainian, and also in Korean, they are made voiceless. They're devoiced and then also often get turned into a stop if it's not a stop sound. So in order to compensate for this, in English, what we do is we stretch out the vowel just a tiny bit. So it's not distinctively long in the sense of like bed, bait, bet, bait, but it's still made just a tiny bit longer. Cap, cab. Notice the voicing makes it a little longer. Cap, cab, wolf, wolves, and so on. Or we see this in the next sentence. He looked into her eyes. That sounds romantic. If you don't pronounce that properly with the voicing, eyes, so I, that's a vowel sound, the S becomes voiced into sort of a Z sound. He looked into her eyes. If you don't make the voicing audible in the vibration in the Z, and also that compensatory, that is compensatory lengthening of the vowel, that slight lengthening of the vowel. And if you say he looked into her eyes, that sounds kind of funny. It doesn't sound romantic. Maybe he's a chemist and he's interested in the ice in her glass. I don't know. Yeah, he looked into her eyes. He looked into her ice. Sounds very different. Okay. So if you're complimenting a woman on her beautiful eyes, just say eyes, not, oh, you have beautiful ice. Yes, the freezer works very well here. Also, the zookeeper fed the wolf or the wolves. Notice the S becomes voiced in wolves, and you might hear a little bit of lengthening of the vowel and clear voicing on the plural wolves. And we have a few irregular sounds like this, and because like wolf, wolves, it's grammatically irregular. It goes back to Old English, where voicing played more of a role in the language and grammatical distinctions a long time ago in English. So the zookeeper fed the wolf, fed the wolves. Now let's look at some more complicated sentences, and some of the other issues that we talked about will arise here. I need a cable for my phone. So remember, these are long vowels. Cable, cable. And also the syllable length cable. Stressed syllable A. Bull is unstressed, so it's very, very short and maybe hard to hear. I need a cable for my phone. And then O, phone, a long vowel. O. It's a long glided vowel, not O, not phone, but O, phone. I need a cable for my phone. Okay, next sentence. I need some notebooks and pens. You're at an office supply store or a stationery store and you say, I need some notebooks and pens. So several things here. Notebooks. So first of all, main stress is on the first part of a compound usually. Most of the time, notebooks. So main stress on note. Usually the first part of a compound is stressed more than the second part. Notebooks. The book is a secondary level stress. It's still stressed, but it's kind of a minor or secondary stress. Notebooks. So note, of course, long O, not, but O, note. Now notice the T. T is usually is a stop sound. That means usually it's a stop release. T. But before, in the middle of a word, if it's at the end of one syllable and before another stop or fricative sound, often the T or other stop sounds will be unreleased. T, D, P, B, G, K. Those stop sounds will be unreleased if they are immediately followed by a different stop or fricative sound. Notebooks, so not notebooks, and don't put an extra syllable on the S, books, but notebooks, 2 syllables. Notebooks, not note, but notebooks. So the T is unreleased. Notebooks and pens. So pens, first of all, in some American dialects, like in the South where I grew up, when some words like short words where you have the eh, like the bed vowel, and the in, like pen, like in Texas where I grew up, it gets pronounced pins. So Texans might not distinguish pens and pins. Okay, that's one thing if you're going to certain places in the US, like the southern US, southwestern US. Pens. And so another thing here is the S is voiced. N is voiced, so the S ending gets voiced. Pens, not pence. You don't want to say pence. Pence is like a person's last name. So for example, Mike Pence, the former vice president under Trump. Yeah, you could buy politicians. If you have a few $1 million to spare, you can buy Pence, you can buy Mike Pence, you can buy other politicians. It's easy to buy American politicians. So rich people, billionaires often go shopping and buy politicians, vice presidents, senators, congressmen. They're easy to buy if you have a lot of money, but it's not something you're going to buy at an office supply store with your notebooks. So you need to be clear and say, I need some notebooks and pens. I want to buy pens today. Okay, maybe I'll buy some politicians tomorrow while I'm, when I fly to Washington, D.C. But today I just want to buy notebooks and pens. So, and you don't exaggerate the voicing. It's kind of partly voiced. This final Z sound for S as a grammatical ending, it's voiced. It's not maybe fully voiced, but it's voiced enough that we can hear it. Pens. Next, you have some frozen hash browns. So frozen O. And the Z, of course, is a voiced S. Z, not a Z. Frozen hash browns. Okay, so an adjective will have less stress than the noun. So in a noun phrase like frozen hash browns, the noun will have a little more stress than, say, an adjective before it. Nouns are more important. So noun will have more of a stress than an adjective before it. Like I grew up in a White House, and that's different from, living in the White House in Washington, D.C., or in a greenhouse, which is a compound noun. So hash browns is kind of a compound. Hash, so palatal consonant, hash, with your tongue curled up for the sh. Don't make a flat tongue like he, hashy browns. Because actually that might sound like hashish, which is an illegal drug in many countries. So you don't want to sound like you're asking for drugs. It's a drug related to marijuana, but much stronger. Don't want to get you in, I don't want you to embarrass yourself or get in trouble by asking for what sounds like illegal drugs. Hash browns. So keep your tongue curled up for hash browns. And of course, hash has more stress. Compound hash browns, so hash has more stress than browns. Hash browns, and voiced, the S becomes voiced on browns also. Hash browns. Okay, can I buy some Dutch beer and some French wine? So some Dutch beer, Dutch, tongue curled up, not flat tongue like in Asian languages. Dutchy, not Dutchy, but Dutch, tongue curled up, touching the palatal area. Dutch beer. Can I buy some Dutch beer? Okay, main stress on beer, long vowel, and some French wine. So again, French, not Frenchy, but French, tongue curled up, French wine. And main stress on wine, French wine. Next, do you have any new jazz CDs? Okay, so a number of problems here for Asians. Jazz, so it's a J. Your tongue is curled up for J. Jazz. The vowel here for your jaw is low. Jazz. And the Z, of course, is just a voiced S. Z, jazz. It's the voiced version of voiced equivalent of an S. Z, not a ch like in Asian languages, but a z, jazz. So any new jazz CDs? So CDs. She, not she, but C. So don't make that flat tongue she like in East Asian languages, like Korean, Japanese, Chinese, but C. Keep your tongue curled up for regular S, CDs. CDs. The S here, D, pronounced the way you pronounce D, the name of the letter ends in a vowel, D. So the S becomes voiced, the plural S, Ds, CDs. Now, I mentioned that compounds usually have the main stress in the first part, like hash browns, notebooks. Now, abbreviations are different. In abbreviations, usually the last letter is stressed more than the others, like CDs, a CD, CIA, FBI, UN, WHO. The last letter is usually stressed more than other letters in abbreviations and similar things. So any new jazz CDs? Do you have any new jazz CDs? Any new jazz CDs? And probably jazz might be more stressed. It's a compound. Usually you would think of it as a compound. Any new jazz CDs? So for Asian students, this might not roll off the tongue so easily, and you need to practice. Your tongue has to learn to do these gymnastics to pronounce these consonant clusters and these other kinds of consonants that are very different from your language. Next, I need some size C batteries. So size C is kind of a compound adjective modifying batteries. So probably batteries is going to have more stress than size C. C, of course, S, keep an S with your tongue pointed up toward the alveolar area. Size C, not she, but size C batteries. The S in batteries, of course, gets voiced into a Z sound. It's plural. After battery, a vowel ending. Battery, batteries. So I need some size C batteries. And of course, also the Z in size might be tricky for maybe a few Asian students or older people more so. So those are some examples of pronunciation issues. And one thing you can do, of course, to practice pronunciation, well, some things you can do. You can listen to pop songs and follow along with the lyrics. You can Google the lyrics and sing along with the songs and learn the text. Listen to audiobooks and follow along. Occasionally, you can kind of follow along a speaker on video, some kind of video, and kind of do what's called shadowing. You kind of repeat what they say right after them. It's something you can do up to a certain point. After a while, it gets kind of tiring, but a little bit of shadowing practice, maybe listening to and repeating after the speaker right after they say something, like your favorite TV show or movie, shadowing your favorite speaker or YouTube video. And of course, tongue twisters are something you can look up and find and practice with. These can be maybe fun ways of practicing consonants and vowels and stress patterns. So, for example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? That's fun, isn't it? And by the way, American British school kids, one thing they do with tongue twisters is they try to say them 3 times fast. So that may be a bit much for you, but at least try to say it faster and faster. Start with kind of slow speed and then do it again and pick up your speed and practice. Or Sally sells seashells by the seashore. So if she sells seashells by the seashore, where are the seashells Sally sells? That's a fun one. A lot of palatals here. And last one, I think she should sit. I think she should sit. I think she should sit. Practice that maybe while you're alone. Other people around you might get offended if you make a mistake. But that's a good one to practice, because making a mistake with that one could, in other contexts, could be embarrassing. So, some tips for you. I hope this helps, and I hope you can have maybe fun practicing with English pronunciation. It's an interesting language, complicated pronunciation system in English, because the language has such a complex history. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope this helps, and maybe I'll see you in a later video. Goodbye.